Broadcasting worldwide from the beautiful hill country in Texas, this is OneRadioNetwork.com. Okay, good morning. We are starting the show. Yeah, I don't know what happened, but sometime when you call across the ocean, things get a little strange. But we're hooked up with Wlliam Engdahl, who you are going to meet in just a second. I'm really looking forward to our conversation with this man because, well, it's been about a month and a half, and, man, keeping up with what's going on in Europe and North Africa and the rest of the world over there is quite a challenge, to say the least. Good morning. This is Patrick Timpone. Don't mind me. I'm just babbling away. Patrick Timpone, OneRadioNetwork.com, also NaturalNewsRadio.com. It's about 9 o'clock Central Time, about 4 o'clock in the afternoon in Germany, where Wlliam Engdahl is. In 1 hour, we're going to have some fun and move to the Shenandoah Valley and speak with Joe Salatin, who is quite an interesting farmer. Mr. Engdahl would probably be interested in listening to this because he's quite in tune with the whole agricultural world. This fellow's really into sustainability. Fascinating place. People come from all over the world to visit. Written a bunch of books about sustainable farming and how he does it. And where do you hear some of the things that he does? He uses all the poop, man. It's crazy what he does. It's pretty interesting. Tomorrow, Open Phone Friday. We got a lot of good things for you next week. So stick around. Anytime that you would like to join the show, 9 to 11 o'clock Central Time, live, you can do that by dialing 888-663-6386, 888-663-6386. Email patrick@oneradionetwork.com. Now off to Germany, Mr. Wlliam Engdahl, and he has all kinds of books about politics, war, oil. When we last talked to him, his latest book, Myths, Lies, and Oil Wars, just released in China, and I think it's due to be released in English at any time. Engdahl.oilgeopolitics.net. And I believe, Mr. Engdahl, you have FWilliamEngdahl.com too, right? Is that the easy one?
No, it's Patrick, it's WlliamEngdahl.com. And that gives you a direct link to the 5 books, and then at the bottom there's a link to my main website with all the archive articles and YouTube interviews with various media.
Gotcha. So WlliamEngdahl.com. Well, I'm glad you got that URL and didn't have to go out and pay somebody across the ocean for it or something. That's great. Well, how have you been?
Great.
Yeah.
Well, I've been doing a lot of traveling. I was doing a tour of England and Ireland in the last few weeks, and also Croatia, where I had the Myths, Lies, and Oil Wars book was released in Croatia about 6 weeks ago and had a very good reception there.
Uh-huh. And in English soon?
In English, it's on its way to be available through Amazon.com in the States and Canada and the UK. And
pretty soon.
Yeah, well, it'll take about 3 weeks.
Okay, good. Well, we'll put a link up there when it comes up. Tell us a little bit about, let's start there with Ireland. We talked with a gentleman who was kind of on top of the farmers to try to pass that resolution, what was it, 2-3 weeks ago, to say no to the bankers, but that failed. What's really going on over there?
Well, the bankers have made a coup d'etat in Ireland. What they did is Merrill Lynch, actually back when the crisis really first broke about 3 years ago,
mm-hmm.
they were called in to advise the Irish government on what to do to stop the speculation from hedge funds and others against the biggest Irish banks, Allied Irish and 2 others. And what the geniuses at Merrill Lynch advised, probably with ulterior motives, is that if the government would step in and guarantee not only the deposits, which is the normal kind of emergency when there's a bank run, but they would guarantee all liabilities of the 3 largest Irish banks, then that would signal the markets that the crisis is under control, and that would stop the speculation. Well, what it did was very conveniently take a private banking problem and make it a state debt problem, where Ireland before that had virtually negligible or totally manageable state debt. So the Irish government became the bag holder. Then they were forced to turn to the International Monetary Fund, who comes in and tells them to privatize all the crown jewels of the state, including huge oil resources offshore Ireland. And so the foreign looters and plunderers are just coming in and scavenging all the assets, and the people of Ireland are out-migrating. They're just leaving in droves, young people, because they can't find any work. House values have totally catered in, like in the U.S. and other places, Spain, and it's a catastrophe.
Do the people on the street understand this asset grab that's going on?
Most of them are just kind of numb. And some Irish friends of mine are convinced that it has a physiological basis in the fact that about 20 or so years ago, the Irish government ordered a fluoridation of all their water. Now, I just don't have the scientific wherewithal to confirm if this is true, but I've seen independent studies that show that fluoride really kind of dulls the wits, dulls the brain when you have that in the water supply. I don't know if that's the reason, but I think they're just so stunned by what's been done and the shock of this collapse that they don't know quite what to do. Although the Irish, I have to say, the Irish as a people are one of the feistiest fighting people I've ever met around the world, and hopefully they'll,
This referendum that failed, Mr. Engdahl, it was a similar kind of an Iceland move where they just wanted to tell the bankers no.
It was a little bit similar, but the Ireland has this right to referendum, so they had to go through with it. And what the powers that be very skillfully did was play on the fact that many elderly Irish voters, a lot of the young people just gave up and didn't even bother to vote. So the older ones who did vote, they convinced them that the security of their pensions was dependent on having the EU bailout monies to come in. So that's why they voted in this slim margin. They voted yes.
My goodness!
But the main press organs, I was in just on the weekend of this referendum, and the main press organs were just pure Goebbels or Orwellian propaganda rags. They had blaring headlines: Ireland voters, it stinks, but I'm going to vote yes.
I see.
Like that kind of thing. So it's the best of two bad choices, kind of. So they just profiled the population and manipulated them to do this.
So, as in most of the world, the money elite, they control the media.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Guinness and these kind of powerful billionaire interests, private families, they control the media.
Mm-hmm.
And in London, media controls key Irish media.
So then now the Irish people are on the hook for loans that the banks created, the debt and with the derivatives and such, and they're having to give up their assets.
Well, they got to pay it through taxes over the next
taxes, but they give up their assets as collateral.
Well, no, they're selling their assets to raise money.
Oh,
it's just
it's the same model. Thing. Yeah, same model, isn't it, around the world?
Yeah, well, it's the same model as they used in Argentina and so in the 80s, and virtually bankrupted Argentina, and they've used it all around the world. Yeah, it's the IMF model. It's the banker's preferred weapon, because you get a neutral body, the International Monetary Fund, to come in as the hatchet man and just cut the place to ribbons.
Yeah. Now, the ECB is gaining more and more stature over the last few weeks, as you know, and you're in Germany. Give us the latest with Ms.Merkel, and I saw one quote, Mr. Engdahl, that she said, "Euro bonds over my dead body." Do you think they're going to get her to come to the table someday and just do a?
Well, she came to the table. She came. She made a tactical compromise at this last summit a week ago, and agreed to loosen the austerity terms, the austerity demands on Italy, Spain, and the other countries, but especially Italy and Spain, so that there could be some economic growth. I think the Germans are trying to play a shrewd game of financial chicken, using the financial markets to pressure these other countries to accept a German proposal for a partial Eurobond solution that would have certain control mechanisms in place. It's in a certain sense, it's a little bit clever, but it doesn't solve the fundamentals of the problem. It just takes the immediate pressure off. That hasn't yet really been put on the table in Europe, but I think they're taking it step by step.
So you think they're eating away in a little bit at a time to get to their ultimate goal, which would
something like that. That's typical German tactic.
Yeah.
I mean, they're pretty.
Yeah. So now they have the ECB. I think they've just lowered their rates again this morning, and they're going to go directly to the banks, right? Just similar to a TARP that happened here.
Capital can go directly to the banks, not through the government.
Yeah, similar to a TARP here, almost.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a little bit like the TARP.
And then
only it's not done by the U.S. government, the Treasury, and the taxpayers. It's done out of this, paper creation of money out of thin air through the European Central Bank.
For the European Central Bank, yeah. And are they out of Brussels?
No, they're based right here in Frankfurt.
Oh, they're in Frankfurt, man. Yeah. You guys are in the belly of the beast there. Jeez, man.
Yeah, there's a big stench that you smell when you walk by the place.
So you're in Frankfurt. So what are the German people talking about? Do you go out to the coffee shops, to the restaurants, the pubs? Yeah.
Sure.
What are they talking about? I mean, what's the German on the street thinking about this?
Well, it's kind of funny because up until now, Germany has benefited. They've been the great winner of the export kings of the world and certainly of Europe. And the job creation, the unemployment is down fairly low. So they'll grumble a little bit, but they're more interested, to be honest, to be blunt, in the German football championships.
Really?
Than the Euro, because they don't. It's not an immediate issue for them as they see it. It's not like the Greeks or the Spanish where they're right on the firing line. The Germans, they haven't really been hurt by this crisis yet. Now I have just started picking up. For example, I met the printer of the largest newspaper printer in Germany, prints all the major newspapers, and if you want to talk about a leading economic indicator, the drop-off or the rise in newspaper advertisements for jobs and products and so forth is a wonderful leading indicator of future economic trends. And he said that in the last month to two, the ad revenues in all newspapers that he prints, and you can tell by the size of the paper, Sunday edition, instead of having 100 pages, has 75 or 60. It's pretty dramatic. I don't have any numbers, but he said he's expecting it's going to be a very rough winter coming in, and he kind of feared the worst. I don't know. This was about a month ago, so I haven't got an update on that. But Germany's starting to feel the impact of this austerity in the rest of Europe. So I think that's one reason Merkel. She's a shrewd bargainer. She plays hardball like almost no other politician in Europe. But she's also, in the end of the day, pragmatist, and that's what we saw on the weekend.
And she just
the crisis isn't over.
Yeah.
It's just crisis management.
No, and so she wants to keep her job, number one.
Yeah,
that's it. Yeah.
She likes the power, I think.
Yeah. But so much talk about how Europe in total is going to have a rough time economically, just using the recession word again.
Yeah.
Germany has to sell their stuff. Did they sell to China and other places that are doing better now, or do they sell mostly to Europe? They sell all over the world?
Germany.
Yeah, Germany.
Oh, Germany exports all over the world, but their biggest market was something like 66 or 67% of their exports go inside the European Union.
Right,
so,
yeah.
That's something that a lot of people forget. And then their biggest trading partner of Germany at all is not the United States, it's China.
China.
Yeah. So, if China starts getting shaky, then that's going to hurt Germany as well.
Yeah. I know that you spent some time over there and written about that.
Yeah.
Is it slowing down China at all? We hear a lot of talk that possibly it is, a lot of factories and stuff, but you don't know what to believe.
Imports of iron ore have dropped dramatically in the last couple of months to China, which is always kind of a leading indicator. If that's settled down or not, I haven't seen. Or this was about 5 or 6 weeks ago, but anecdotal evidence indicates that they're starting to feel a little bit pain there in China too. So,
Well, I know that you keep your tabs on oil, and oil went up about, what, was it $10 the other day? $9 a barrel? Was it all this talk of the Strait of Hormuz thing that drove that, or what was that about?
Well, the oil price is so influenced by derivative markets and the manipulation of derivative markets, and those markets are not transparent. So the escalation of tensions, Moscow just, Lavrov, the foreign minister of Russia, just today warned the West of a big war possibility in Syria, and I think that can be used by hedge funds and others with an interest in pushing the price up, to jack it up. But it's the United States is intent on getting a war in Syria and a regime change, and Russia and China are as intent on preventing that. And I have to say on this one, I think Russia and China have the better argument. The West should stick its nose out of these countries. The United States has no right to tell other countries how to run their internal affairs. I mean, what if the Chinese told the U.S. how to impose human rights inside the United States? Be a little bit peeved at that. And they say, well, we're going to cut off all our bond purchases to the U.S. because you don't observe human rights. Well, they'd be formally correct.
but crazy. Yeah. So that's where we were going to go, Syria. I mean, what we hear is, of course, we get clips of what Hillary Clinton is saying, and mostly we get a lot of really morbid reports about the Syrian regime and what they're doing to the people, of course, to convince Americans that when they go to war, I guess, I'm just speculating here that it's going to be a good thing. Am I on the right track?
Yeah, well, they're trying to justify this thing.
Yeah. So tell us what's going on.
What's going on is you've had covert army. This has been an armed insurgency inside an established government of al-Assad, because al-Assad is close with Iran and doesn't play to the music of NATO, basically. And they want to get him out as a step toward toppling the Ahmadinejad regime in Iran and getting that out of the orbit of China, Russia, Iran, which forms a geopolitical triangle, if you will, that is resisting one sole superpower dictating the terms of everything. So it's not a one-sided affair where the Syrian army is going around killing civilians. That would be, if you think about it for a second, that would be the dumbest thing that a regime in power would do, is have its army kill its own people. Then you guarantee that the population is going to be resisting you. What's happening, and this I was in Turkey a few weeks ago, and I talked with a journalist who had spent a good 4 weeks traveling by bus all around Syria, and he just come back. He said what's happening is he saw this actually with his own eyes. A group of terrorists, let's call them terrorists because they come in with rifles and kill people randomly, children, women, it doesn't matter to them. Mm-hmm. They send them across, they're trained in Turkey, given AK-47s or whatever, and a fistful of dollars, and they're sent across the border, snuck across the border into Syria, and then they do all these terrorist acts. And they're called the Great Opposition, and backed by Hillary Clinton, backed by the European Union, and NATO, and so forth. Well, this is just a total violation of every principle of the United Nations Charter. But this is what's happening inside Syria, and the Syrian government is trying to maintain order. What would the United States government do if a bunch of Mexicans armed with AK-47 came across the border from Mexico, and a bunch of Canadians came across from Canada and started killing women and children and randomly terrorizing the country? You can better believe that there would be some steps to bring that under control by the Obama government.
So overall, this is a classic kind of West versus China, Russia, and Iran, and they need Assad to kind of go together when they start going after Iran. They need Assad out of there.
Yeah, they need to get rid of him.
Get rid of him.
Yeah. And
boy, that's spooky. Man, that's got World War III written all over it.
It certainly does. It certainly does. It's like the Spanish Civil War, before World War II. Mm-hmm. You had the Soviet Union pouring arms into the communist side, and Republicans, and then you had the Nazis pouring arms into the monarchist side in Franco, and it was a battleground between the West, the Soviets and the Nazis before World War II, testing out their latest weapons. So in a way, it's a little bit like that. And if this escalates, it could Putin has been warning of this. The Russians have been warning. The Chinese, the Syrians have certainly been warning, but nobody, listens to them. So, but it's a pretty ugly thing that Washington is doing. The Obama administration is doing in Syria.
So you think that Putin really deeply believes that he's got to hold on to his turf, or are there just other people giving him money because, well, nothing like a good old war? These guys finance both sides of the deal, don't they?
Who, Russia?
No, the money elite in the world. They finance all the wars, don't they? So.
Well, I think this point they want regime change, and they want it bad because it's a huge link in a chain of resistance to the New World Order.
Assad. They want Assad out.
Yeah, they want to topple Syria, create a domino effect, topple Iran, bring Iran under NATO control, and that's not going to work. You have U.S. Military senior generals warning the White House not to try this madness. You have Israeli, former head of the Israeli Mossad coming out saying a war with Iran is unthinkable and unnecessary. So, connect the dots there. These are pretty knowledgeable people.
But you're saying they need Assad out of there with regime change in Syria before they would do something in Iran.
Yeah,
because
they need the Syria is the closest ally to Iran, and they're interdependent. And if Syria goes, then Iran is that much more isolated. Huh. They've got on their other border, they've got NATO in Afghanistan, and Iran is a huge chess piece in the geopolitical game for control of Eurasia, and that makes Russia more isolated and weak. That makes China more isolated and weak. It cuts off the energy flows to China.
Wow. So the people in Syria, do you have any idea, Wlliam Engdahl, of what their awareness is of what's going on? Are they aware of the truth of the matter as you believe?
Oh yeah. I've had this. I've talked with Syrian intellectuals when I was in Turkey, and numerous journalists over the past, more than a year now, and the Syrian people are very well aware. They're just, when you have terrorists running around shooting women and children randomly on the streets from rooftops, you're just terrified. You just stay in your house and because that's the kind of thing that is very hard to control. But they know very well. They said, get these foreigners out of our country. I've talked with Syrians who said, I'm against the Assad regime, but let us sort that out as Syrians. Don't you meddle in with NATO.
So the Assad could be compared to maybe Saddam Hussein back when, where was he originally a Western NATO U.S. person? Was he put in by them and then turned around like the rest of them?
No, he
took
over from his father, who wasn't exactly close with the West or the United States.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
But the Assad is a kind of a more modern. He's much younger. His wife is very Western, and so he's tried to profile himself as well. They allowed a referendum to create a parliament and make a democratic kind of a democratic monarchy, if you will, parliamentary monarchy.
Mm-hmm.
So that's more or less the same as what you have in England and Netherlands and many
United States,
Western countries. Yeah, parliamentary monarchy.
We have a parliamentary monarchy here.
King Obama.
Oh God, I can't believe I'm even giggling about it. 24 minutes after the hour, our monthly or so, whenever we can grab him. He's a busy guy. Wlliam Engdahl. It is WlliamEngdahl.com. WlliamEngdahl.com if you'd like to be on the show. 888-663-6386. Email patrick@oneradionetwork.com. So would it be your opinion that most of the world, I don't know, it's tough quite. The common folk around the world, do they know what's going on with
Well,
in Syria, I mean, how would you gauge that? I don't know. I just trying to get an idea.
I would gauge it the following way: most Europeans, without any great sophistication, certainly in Germany, if you go around and so forth, they watch the evening news, they read the newspaper, and so most people in countries in the Middle East and Turkey and other countries, they see that the one causing all these troubles is the United States of America.
They see that.
They feel impotent to do much about it.
Because we got the most bombs at this point. I
Well,
guess.
You got full spectrum dominance, totalitarian democracy, and the New World Order is the title of one of my books.
Yeah.
That's how they do this.
In the banking, the financial world, and everything, right?
Yeah.
Just kind of all.
But the awareness outside the United States is vastly more than it is inside the United States. But that's not surprising because the control of the media is essential to create a brainwashed or ignorant or non-informed population. The only thing that breaks out of that is occasionally the internet, but that's why the Obama administration is trying to police the internet.
Sure, but are there places around? There must be places then around the world that people get some real close to the mark news.
Well, one of the places is. I appear on there fairly regularly. Is called RT.
Yeah, we know of RT. Yeah.
Yeah, they have a worldwide English language, and I think they're going into Arabic now. Alternative news, alternative to CNN, and it's by no means Russian propaganda. But it's owned by the Russian government. But I've been there. I've been in their studios for interviews in Moscow, and they're mostly very young and very, very sharp Russians, many of whom lived in the United States, when the Soviet Union collapsed.
And they
grew up there, and then they came back home to Russia. They said, America's been destroyed. I don't want to live here. I want to go back to home.
Do they ask you questions that would tend you to want to give answers that are favorable to Russia, or are they pretty straightforward?
They're straightforward. I've never had anyone trying to manipulate me.
That's amazing.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. It is. I asked them, I said, well, you're owned by the government. Does Putin ever try to step in and say, I want you to say this or that? They said, we thought it might be the case, but it's never happened yet. These were young journalists, they're outspoken.
Well, what kind of things is Mr. Putin doing that are dastardly deeds? I mean, we shouldn't always just kind of pick on the West here. I mean, he's not just sitting around hunting every day and hoping that the West doesn't attack him, is he? I mean, he's got to be doing his own weird things as a monarch, isn't he?
Well, Putin, some people call him the Tsar.
The Tsar, yeah.
I think Putin's biggest problem, and the reason that these demonstrations, which are mostly staged by Western interests and NGOs and so forth, that they get any attention at all, is because you have to take a step back, go back to the collapse of the Soviet Union in 1990-91.
Mm-hmm.
When that happened, Washington backed a man called Boris Yeltsin.
Yes.
And I think the only thing Yeltsin cared about until he simply collapsed in an alcoholic stupor in 1999 was to get his supply of vodka and have his family loot billions and billions of dollars of Russian assets. Wow. And the West was more than happy to let that happen under Yeltsin.
Yeah.
So the result of the Yeltsin era, the IMF, forced the privatization, and people became billionaires, got corrupted by more money than most human beings could even dream of, and that created a corruption and a rot. And then in '99, Putin came in, first time as president, and what he did was make a deal with these Russian oligarchs, the ones with the billions owning all the assets, the oil companies and so forth, and said, you bring part of your money back into Russia and help us restabilize the country and pay pensions and certain things that Yeltsin didn't do. Otherwise, we'll seize your assets. And most of them, by and large, did that, and they kept a low profile and, behaved. One or two didn't, and they ended up in prison.
Yeah, the
Khodorkovsky.
Yeah, Khodorkovsky. They just threw him in jail. He wouldn't give him any money.
Well, he tried to buy the presidency.
Oh.
He tried even worse, he tried to change laws on oil ownership and buy the presidency from Putin, and that that just didn't go. So but the point is, so Russia was starting to rebuild. I was there just back in October, and in Moscow and St. Petersburg, and they were starting to rebuild and create some stability in the economy. And then comes the 2007-2008 global financial crisis, and with it, in 2008, is the collapse of the oil price. Well, that hit Russia just right in the solar plexus economically. And they, it took them several years to kind of climb back from that. So the what Putin has got to do, and friends of mine are actually floating through internet articles and so forth, various suggestions how they can do that. They've got to begin reindustrializing the interior of Russia that's just been depopulated over the past 20 years, and create that kind of economic stability that could turn parts of Russia into a boom region economically. And if Putin does not do that, he knows he's under the gun on that. But the question is how to do it. If he does not do that, he's going to face a full-scale revolt at home, and that's what Washington is kind of counting on, because Putin is a formidable opponent in terms of international diplomacy. He's tough as nails. He's a brilliant chess player, as many Russians are, and also a martial arts expert. And he can be a tough negotiator. He doesn't, he's not a softy like Medvedev was. So
yeah, and it doesn't look like he spends his life in the bottle.
No, I don't think he drinks at all.
Yeah, he looks like a pretty clean.
He's a tough cookie.
Healthy guy. Boy, yeah. And what kind of unemployment do they have in Russia? Any idea?
Oh, it's horrendous. Inside the rural areas, you've had this out-migration, but it's just horrendous. It's really bad.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a little bit stabilized, but it's most people have to just have their own garden to get food to eat and so forth.
My goodness. All right, sir, stay right there. It's always a pleasure to have Wlliam Engdahl, a fellow that lives in Frankfurt and travels around and has contacts all over Europe, and just very prolific writer. His latest book is going to be coming out, Myths, Lies, and Oil Wars, in English soon. We'll let you know here. His website is WlliamEngdahl.com. 888-663-6386. Phone lines are always open. And also email Patrick at oneradionetwork.com. Also streaming live every morning on naturalnewsradio.com. Confessions of a Lunatic, Sustainable Environmentalist Farmer, Joe Salatin, in 27 minutes or so. When we finish up with world politics, we're going to need a dose of agriculture and sustainability. We're going to be talking a lot about cow poop and pig poop and rabbit poop. So we'll stay in this. Well, forget it. The rebounder is, if you're thinking about getting something that you would like to start an exercise program, maybe you just don't do much, and you should do more. We know. I think we're going to do a show next week from a real scientist about the difference with people who move around, the people that don't. And you can just look at your Uncle Charlie, your father or your brother, and compare to people that do exercise, and it's essential. We were built to do these things, run after lions and run from them or whatever. You know what I'm saying? And it really is important. And these days, jogging is not all that much fun. You have a lot of carbon monoxide stuff out there, and with the weather, and a rebounder, you can just simply jump up and down and get an amazing amount of aerobic activity. I can get my heart rate going to, one of the hallmarks of the heart rate thing you probably have heard about is you take 220 minus your age, and then you want to do 75 to 80% of that number, your pulse rate, for 15-20 minutes a day. And that gives you the cardiovascular ooh-ha that you want to have. Ooh-ha is a technical term. So you just go 220 minus your age, and then 75% of that number, and that number is where you want to get your pulse about 20 minutes a day to really keep your heart going really well. Over the years, I've been rebounding for so long, I I can just jump and jump and jump and jump and jump, and I've had to add weights to even start to work my heart as much as I want to. That's because it's grown so strong over the years, the circulation, that you kind of have to do more. Of course, when your heart is in as good a shape as mine is, and all the circulation, you don't have to hit that number. You're already there, and then you're just kind of jumping for fun. I suspect if I would quit after 6 months or a year, the pulse rate would raise and the circulation would change. But it's really cool. The long-term benefits of doing 3 or 4 times a week, and it's fun, is amazing. So it's right there on the front page. Click and order the Rebounder, $269, lifetime warranty, $269, small trampoline. Check it out, $269, lifetime warranty. Front page, oneradionetwork.com. Remember when someone on the air said, insulin growth factors in colostrum cause cancer? Dr. Anthony Kleinschmidt responds now.
Yeah, insulin growth factor 1 and 2, give or take 87 plus different growth proteins that make up the IGF-1 superfamily.
And that's in colostrum.
And that's all in colostrum, all naturally occurring.
How do some people try to connect this with cancer producing?
If you have a high abundance of IGF-1, say, circulating in the bloodstream, they can actually pinpoint and say, oh, you may be susceptible or you maybe have something else going on. So they actually used it as a biomarker for cancer. Well, saying it the right way, they said, you have cancer now. It culminates in the impaired functioning of IGF-1 receptor sites on the surface of the cells. Well, they took that and said, causes cancer, and it will continue to cause cancer. Absolutely not. That's a biomarker. You can take any topic out there, but if I wanted to make it into a negative, all you got to do is just take one little piece out, turn it around, and you don't have to have any truth in that whatsoever. You just have to misquote it.
You just may want to try it and see how you feel. Surthrival Colostrum from Daniel Vitalis. Click and order. OneRadioNetwork.com.
Could saving 15% of your money in gold coins really save you money on your car insurance? No. But it sure will give you a lot of peace of mind in uncertain times. Protecting your wealth is a great idea in an economy where money is being inflated by the rapid expansion of money supply by central banks all over the world. Learn to protect your wealth. We can be reached directly to answer your questions at 1-800-878-2646 or visit us on the web at usgoldcoins.com.
Well, evidently the Wall Street boys know that Europe is just kicking the can down the road. The dollar massively up today. It's big, 70.72 basis points. The U.S. dollar index is almost at 83. The dollar's on steroids. To give it a perspective, I think in around 2008 or so when all this started to hit, the dollar was down to about 70 on the USD, something around there. Crude is down about $0.50, but close to $90. So the dollar's up strong, means the euro's down. And when the dollar's up strong, gold and silver are down, but not much, $7 or so down, $1,609 an ounce for gold, $27.85 for silver. Don't forget, we talk a lot about the clays and the chlorella. This BioAid superfood works really well as a chlorella kind of chelating agent in your stomach. So if you do the clays from Michael King and the BioAid superfood, you got a dual 1-2 punch there to really chelate heavy metals that are coming out of everywhere.
Know the source. One Radio Network. Talk to Patrick now. 888-663-6386 or email patrick@oneradionetwork.com.
Wlliam Engdahl, he's our man. Every now and then we get a chance to talk to him. Try to do it at least once a month or so. We're in that range, 6 weeks, to talk about his work, geopolitics. And I noticed you had an article. I don't want to get too much into it, but maybe you could lead me to it. So our listeners, did you have an article, or did I dream this, about bees and the...
the birds and the bees.
The birds and the bees. Where did I see that? Was it a blacklisted news or something?
It's pretty well all over the place.
Is it?
Yeah, it's on
where could
global research. And,
okay.
It's just all over the place.
Global research. That would be. You don't. Do you have it on your website?
It's not yet on my website. Okay. There's been a glitch in rejigging the website.
So you stay up with this whole plant agricultural thing that's going on, and What's your take on the bee thing? What is going on?
Oh yeah, this is really scary stuff. There's something. It's fairly new on the market in a mass distribution over the past 7-8 years. They're called neo-nicotinoids.
Wow.
It's a long word, but if you break it down, nicotine, everybody knows that word.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a new chemical variant of that. That's the primary marketer of this is the German pharmaceutical and agrochemical company Bayer. Bayer's
Sure.
aspirin and so forth. Well,
Sure.
they're doing some pretty ugly stuff in the pesticide world. And what they have developed is a more effective pesticide, to protect plants. But in the course of this, they have suppressed evidence, and this has come out in court suits and all sorts of places in Europe and elsewhere, such that the toxic risk to bees and small birds, songbirds, is so severe that several governments in Europe, including France and Germany, have banned it. And it's a German company, Bayer. It's one of the top German, 30
Sure.
Industrial companies. They've been banned in their own country because the stuff is so toxic. And in the U.S., I think the only conclusion one can reach is that the Environmental Protection Agency is just corrupt at the top and stinks to high heavens.
Mm-hmm.
They've just ignored their own in-house scientists warning against the use of these neo-nicotinoids. Some of their trade names are imidacloprid and gaucho and poncho.
Mm.
And gaucho and poncho are quite widely used.
My God. And they spray this stuff, Mr. Engdahl, on what kind of crops?
Oh, just all sorts of, corn and any crops where they want to spray a pesticide. And the scary thing about this, not only does it go to the central nervous system of bees and cause colony collapse disorder,
mm-hmm.
but that it... I'll just read you a quote from
Okay.
Professor Henk Tennekes in Holland, who's done groundbreaking work on the dangers of this. He said, today the major illnesses confronting children in the United States include a number of psychosocial and behavioral conditions. Neurodevelopmental disorders, including learning disabilities, dyslexia, mental retardation, attention deficit disorder, and autism. The occurrence is more prevalent than previously thought, affecting 5% to 10% of the 4 million children born in the U.S. annually. He continues, beyond childhood, incident rates of chronic neurodegenerative disease of adult life, such as Parkinson's and dementia, have increased markedly. The trends raise the possibility that exposures in early life trigger later illness, perhaps by reducing the number of cells in essential regions of the brain to below the level needed to maintain function in the face of advancing age. Prenatal, and now this is the scary part, prenatal, before birth, and childhood exposures to pesticides have emerged as a significant risk factor explaining impacts on brain structure and health that can increase the risk of neurological disease later in life. And that is what we're talking about here. And these neonicotinoids are some of the most toxic pesticides. It is far worse than DDT ever was.
And the name of the fellow that you just quoted?
Henk Tennekes, H-E-N-K, Dutch professor, T-E-N-N-E-K-E-S. If you Google the article, the title is different on different websites, but it's Scary Fact About Birds and the Bees. And
it's T-E-N-N-E-K-E-S, Henk Tennekes, out of Dutch.
Holland. He's in Holland.
In Holland.
Yeah.
So these...
You might want to have them on
I was thinking, maybe Sharon might, if you have any kind of...
If she emails me, I'll be glad to give her contact to him.
So is there any way to speculate if these neonicotinoids have been around for enough years to be connected on this colony collapse, which has been going on, I guess, for 5 or 10
years? There's little doubt about the fact that that's a direct connection now.
My goodness.
The massive use of neonicotinoids, especially in the United States and across certain European countries before it was banned, that began around 2003, 2004. And since 2004, something like 1 million beehives have died across the United States, and 25 states are reporting colony collapse disorder. And if we lose the bees, we're losing the pollination factor that's essential for for the entire food chain. I mean, we're playing around with basics of nature. It acts as a central nervous system paralytic on the actual nervous system of the bees and these little birds. And this isn't a joke. This is damn serious. I mean, this is really scary stuff.
It's really, really basic stuff. Well, I know that the what's the plant where they for tobacco? What is it? What's the plant to make tobacco out of?
Tobacco plant.
Oh, I guess it's tobacco plant. Yeah. But I know that it's so powerful that the people have actually used like one tobacco plant in an acre or so to help keep the bugs away, and it works. I mean, this stuff is really strong. I guess it must come from this plant, this nicotinoid somehow.
Yeah, it could well be. I don't know the.
It must be tied in with nicotine.
It is tied in with nicotine. It's a variation of the nicotine family. So.
Well, we'll have to do some more exploration. I've not heard that word before. Neo-nicotinoid. Wow. Mm-hmm. And they're tying it right in with all these psycho problems that are going on with ADD and all that.
Well, yeah. I mean, look at the medical statistics. There's a very good argument that can set people clear on what this is. Look at the explosive rate of increase of autism among newborn and young children in the States over the past 20 years. And you have autism that's linked to genetic causes, but the genetic causes are very slow in altering. They're not. So there's nothing genetically that's happened to create a tenfold increase in autism in the last 10 years. So it has to be environmental. And what has happened to change the environment? Well, one of the things is spraying massively on crops that are brought into the human food chain through soybeans and corn in the U.S. With Roundup, this highly toxic poison that Monsanto sells with its GMO seeds for soybeans and corn. And the other thing are these neo-nicotinoids, and nobody is doing serious looking. Certainly not the U.S. government. They've been the honest scientists inside the U.S. government have long since been shackled and threatened with their jobs if they open their mouths. So they become yes men for big industry, and the big industry is making sure that no one is bringing this out in the open.
And if you can believe this, the Senate or the House of Representatives put on an amendment to a bill. I think it was on the healthcare thing. It was on one of the bills, Mr. Engdahl, that said that the states did not have the right to mandate that you must label genetically modified food. I mean,
is that now passed? No.
Well, no. This is just one part of it. It's either the Senate or the House passed this. Yeah. So I mean, and Rand Paul signed this thing.
I heard about that.
It's like, come on, what? I mean, it's just amazing, that the Monsanto kind of big agribusiness that you've written about over the years must be huge amount of power and money. Just must be massive.
Oh yeah, it is. It is.
We recently had Professor Don Huber on. On the show in April. Mm-hmm. Yeah, boy, he I think we had him on for 2 hours. I don't know. It'll curl your hair to hear some of the stuff he talks about.
Yeah, he's doing very important work.
Is he? With the genetically modified and how it affects the...
No, he was on tour over here in Germany.
Oh, was he? Yeah. Well, is it still, though, where you have to label in Europe GMO stuff?
Oh, yeah. That is European Union law.
How did you all pull that off with the...
Well, the GMO has never gotten a foothold in Europe the way it has in the United States. And there's massive corruption in Brussels, in the center of the European Commission. You have to assume it's corruption because the European Food Safety Authority, the director of that, these are the people who are supposed to be like the EPA in the U.S., ruling on issues of food safety and health for the population. Well, they're all linked to front companies or lobby groups that are financed by Monsanto and the GMO industry. And so they're just recommending GMO right and left. But what's happened in Europe is Monsanto wasn't able to get a foothold in Europe fast enough, and the farmer lobby on the organic side is very strong in many parts of Europe.
Yes.
You know, the food tradition in Europe is a very, very strong cultural thing in France and Italy and Germany and so. And what's happened is, and largely through the internet, is farmers and consumer groups have networked, and there's massive. I've given talks in tiny little farm villages here in Germany, and there are 800 people show up with their farmers and their wives and children and people from the village and so forth in the middle of the week. So yeah, it's they haven't been able to crack it in Europe. Thank goodness.
Yeah. Is the idea of with the winds blowing and the pollination and all of that, is that as treacherous as we're told?
Oh, you bet. You bet. Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's
boy. How do you stop that? What is that? You have to.
Well, you stop it by banning GMO seeds entirely in the entire world immediately.
Yeah.
As one of the greatest health threats that's out there.
As a people, we have to do that. So if you go into Frankfurt and you go to buy, I don't know, something like a spaghetti sauce or something, they'll tell you, it has to say on the label that there's GMO.
It's more than 1%, yeah.
I'll be darned. What does the label look like? I mean, does it just?
Yeah, it has to be readable. So, and what you have are chains of organic food shops across Germany where you can buy that. And they make as a policy. They're doing booming business, by the way, because people want to eat healthy for their children and so forth.
Yeah. What about the GMO soy and corn, which, as you know, sir, you've written about it in your book, Seeds of Destruction, is huge. Giving that to the animals, is that whole awareness in Europe out there?
Oh, excuse me.
That's right.
Less than with the planting of GMO seeds. But it's growing. Mm-hmm. It's growing. It's kind of that's how Monsanto snuck into Europe into the European food chain through the back door, kind of. But the awareness is growing. Mm-hmm. But it's so difficult because farmers have trouble finding alternatives. The best alternative if you want healthy beef, and I think we eat far too much beef. Excuse me, American beef lobby. But if you want to eat moderate amounts of red meat, so that's your business. One of the healthiest ways to eat beef is range-fed beef.
Sure.
And that's been wiped out for this industrialized, concentrated feeding organization, CAFOs, and the factory farms. So you have these huge concentration camps where cattle they're not raised; they're just pumped up with antibiotics because they get fat faster and retain water. And then they're slaughtered and filled with GMO corn and soybeans.
We have access to some raw cheeses over here that are that are raised in Europe, and I like to get the European ones because generally they have that culture to actually feed their sheep and grass. Yeah. I mean, just like they were meant to, right?
Yeah, grass-fed. Yeah.
Well, gosh, after you talk about the food supply with such challenges, it's hard to even go back to war, but let's wrap it up then with so what is, thanks for kind of going off on a tangent there with me, what is then the West plan, in your opinion, with Syria? What are they going to need some kind of event to be able to pull off a more of an invasion, like
well, they've been trying this, and it's come out in every case so far that it was a fake. It wasn't a fake; it was real killing of real innocent civilians, but that they were done by the terrorist opposition and not by the army. The army is just trying to bring the thing under control. It's a very, very tense situation because they're feeding from both Jordan side and from the Turkey side into Syria to topple the regime, the government.
Yeah. And they shot down did they shoot down a plane?
Yeah, but it was in Syrian airspace, flying low, and that's an act of war.
Turkey.
Yeah.
What were they doing over there?
Well, they were trying to create a Bay of Tonkin, a Gulf of Tonkin provocation. It's the only conclusion you can reach.
Yeah.
And then they were forced to back down on that very quickly.
Now, Turkey, the United States is still Turkey's in the United States pocket.
Well, unfortunately, it is. Erdogan, this great moderate Muslim prime minister, his money comes from Saudi Arabia, and his political base is dependent on Fethullah Gulen, who's in exile in Pennsylvania. You can imagine that he must be comfortable with the U.S. intelligence services if they let him live there in peace. And he owns most of the newspapers now in Turkey. He has huge numbers of religious schools that turn out these cult-like followers of his, and then they go and infiltrate the police. It's a secret society. They claim to be the progressive Islam, the moderate face of Islam, but they don't seem to be anything but moderate. And they're creating kind of like what the CIA created with the Ayatollah Khomeini back in 1979 when the Shah was toppled, and there was a genuine mass-based democratic revolution of intellectual students, workers, and so on the streets that were threatening to take the country out of the control of the U.S. and NATO. So Richard Cottam was, I know the details on this down to the letter. Richard Cottam was a CIA station chief who was the handler of a guy named Ayatollah Khomeini in Paris. And they snuck him back in the country and created a PR image that he was the great opponent of the Shah, and kind of created the basis to create this coup d'etat with the theocracy.
We can remember when that happened.
Yeah.
So we hear that they're really having a hard time in Iran with they messed with the SWIFT numbers, and Iran is now selling their oil, I guess, for China and India for gold and stuff. But they have big inflation in Iran, right? Because they're just printing their money to keep this thing going?
It's hard to get accurate information.
Yeah.
The sanctions are having an effect, that's clear. And, yeah.
Do you think they would go in and then block off the Strait of Hormuz just to say so there?
I think that's a lot of saber rattling, frankly, because it's unclear how effective that would be in the long term. But I think they would probably act on the Strait of Hormuz plus every other vehicle, including submerged networks in Ras Tanura, which is the world's largest oil refinery complex in Saudi Arabia, to where thousands of Shiites do all the work in those refineries, and they are there are Iranian intelligence sleepers, peppered throughout that. You can be sure, and they would just begin an armed revolt and just cripple the whole oil production of Saudi Arabia, and look at what that would do to oil prices.
One can only imagine what's going on in the minds of Iranians right now. They must be bumping in the walls. I mean, how do you deal with what's going on there? They must not be feeling very good at all about what's happening.
Well, I think they realize this is a big stakes game. There's no backing down on this one.
Yeah. So Egypt, what's happening there? They had an election, but the military's. Well, what's the story?
Well, what's happened is I think Washington, Hillary Clinton and company wanted a Muslim Brotherhood take over the country from the military. The military is essentially nationalistic. Of course, they've been playing ball with the Pentagon. You have to in the arrangements that Mubarak had. But the military is essentially a bastion of Egyptian nationalism. And so the U.S. wanted to break the nationalism and create this Muslim Brotherhood trend throughout the Middle East. And what happened is the military went in, and until the elections, they were in the controlling position. They still are. And just before the elections, they raided, some months before, they raided the offices of several NGOs, including the offshoots of the National Endowment for Democracy, which is a U.S. government-funded operation that does these regime change things under cover of being an NGO. And they went in and found the documentation that the U.S. government was actively interfering to destabilize Egypt. So they seized all these documents, and that was hugely embarrassing for Washington. And then they realized, they had the proof of what the game was if they played ball with this election agenda. So they, just before the election, they suspended essentially they gave dictatorial control to the military over all essential foreign policy and defense policy. And the elected president would have responsibility for the domestic economy. Well, that's kind of a clever game, and I think that for that reason, they kind of let this Muslim Brotherhood president, take the presidency, because he's going to be holding the bag on a horrendous economic situation. And unless he can pull a miracle, he's going to be the one that the population would say, well, look at what they did. They just made it worse.
So much for the revolution.
Oh, yeah.
Boy, these poor people.
That was a fake from the beginning.
Yeah, I know. You told us it was.
Yeah.
So the people just must be dazed and confused over there, too.
Well, they're confused, angry, but, yeah.
Well, Mr. Engdahl, we're in for some interesting times, are we not, in the next few years?
Oh, we sure are. We're in the middle of it.
We're right in the middle of it. Well, we look forward to your book coming out. Sharon just emailed and said that she put your bee story up on our website, so people can go right to One Radio Network and right on the front page and look at your birds and bees story, and look at Mr. Engdahl's site for all of his works, his books, his articles. Just go to WlliamEngdahl.com. And thanks for being here. We're glad you're feeling good. Keep your eye on the ball, sir, and we'll keep in touch with you.
Always enjoy it, Patrick.
It's always a pleasure. F. Wlliam Engdahl, I think a very great source of information, and we like him. We think he's very credible, and we hope that you enjoy his visits here. Pass on these links to everyone that you care about. You can click the like button on the podcast if you're listening to the podcast, and spreads it around on Facebook, and that's a way that you can help spread the word here at oneradionetwork.com. We also stream live on naturalnewsradio.com. It's about 10:10. We're going to have some fun with Joe Salatin, Confessions of a Lunatic Farmer. Where do you hear what he's doing at Polyface Farms in Shenandoah Valley, Virginia, coming up? Previously with master herbalist Stephen Buhner on pine pollen.
It became a regular part of the diet because it's such a good nutrient food. And pine pollen, more of a nutrient herb that helps the whole body be more vital and strong. I became interested in it, looking at how you could use it to raise male testosterone levels for guys in middle age. So I began looking at that in some depth and found that there's a number of plants on Earth that contain testosterone in them that's pharmaceutically identical to the testosterone in our bodies, and that sort of started the whole thing off.
And pine pollen is one of those.
Pine pollen is probably the highest in testosterone of any plant that I've found so far. I mean, it's exactly molecularly identical to that in our body.
Pine pollen from Surthrival. It's strong. It works. Click and order all Surthrival links. Front page, oneradionetwork.com.